Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what's your story? I'm a 19-year-old male. In August of last year, I was driving with my sister when suddenly her face turned cold. "Gavin, your eyes are yellow." I remember her saying. I quickly pulled down the passenger's mirror, and to my horror, 2 yellow eyes radiated back at me. Fast forward, I spent a month being sick. The initial diagnosis was hepatitis A. Went back to the doctor. Nothing was better. Things were worse in fact. Was sent to the then to the liver transplant unit at UCSF. By this point my eyes had turned muddy orange, and my pee was the color of a mahogany tree. Anyways, the team of liver doctors at UCSF managed to save my liver. I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. Oh, and my eyes are white again. When I was 14 years old, I woke up one day with heavy stomach cramps. We called the hospital, and they told us that I probably have a stomach flu and should go to the doctor next morning. After one of the worst nights ever, vomiting and sleeping next to the toilet, we went to the doctor. I had a fever of 40°C and was aching a lot. The doctor told me I had to go to her and have it checked out because she thought my appendix was inflamed and causing the pain. We went to the and I stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks. But they couldn't find anything. They treated me with broad range antibiotics, and after 2 weeks I was feeling a bit better, and they told me to go home and recover. The night I got back from the hospital I went to bed and started hallucinating that I lived in a retirement home and that pirates were coming to steal our food. So I was flailing around trying to fend off pirates when my mother came in and asked what all the fuss was about. I told her what was going on, and she looked at me like I had summoned a devil. She took my temperature and she instantly took me to the again. I had a 41°C fever. When we went back to the hospital I got treated immediately for inflammation and they did a wide range of tests again. They saw that something in my body was inflamed, but they couldn't find it. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 more weeks when they finally found what was going on. My appendix was inflamed and burst the night I was having the hallucinations, but on all the scans they couldn't see my appendix. The doctor told me that if I came in 2 days later I would have died because of the pus flowing in my body. Apparently there is a 1% chance of all the appendix cases that the appendix is so stretched out that they couldn't see it on the scans, or that the area was so inflamed they didn't see it. So after staying on antibiotics for about 2 more weeks they finally removed my appendix and all the pain was gone. I stayed in the hospital for over 4 weeks just because of my appendix and my bad luck on being that 1%. For my 7th birthday we went to Disneyland. They just happened to be having a car day giveaway when we were there. For my 7th birthday, Mickey Mouse gave me a Pontiac Firebird. I'm allergic to potatoes. Never met someone else who is, so I guess it's 1 in a million. Never eaten chips or fries. How I met my wife. I'm from the Netherlands. She is from the US. We met in Israel. It was my first weekend in Israel. Decided to go on a pub crawl to meet some people and have fun. As I'm buying the ticket my now wife walks up to the counter to also buy a ticket. The girl working there introduces us. We hit it off the first night, but I'm leaving in 2 days to stay with friends of friends in the middle of the desert for 3 months. 2 days after I leave I lose my phone. Don't have any way to get back in touch with her. I had little money and could stay/work with the people in the desert. But I kept thinking about her, so after a week I say I'm leaving. Take the next bus, goes 3 times a week, at 5 AM, and then a train to Tel Aviv. I had no idea how to find her, where to stay, and very little money. I email a couple hostels to find a work/stay agreement. Those jobs are very popular and usually planned months in advance. I get an email back when I arrive in Tel Aviv. I can come in for an interview because they have a spot. This is already ridiculously lucky. Right after the interview and wrapping of my belongings, I went back to the first hostel to see if they would give me information. They wouldn't give me anything. Now I'm at a loss. Tel Aviv is a city of more than 500,000 people. I don't know anyone and have little more than the clothes on my back. Kind of defeated I start wandering around/exploring the city. After a couple hours I get hungry and decide to treat myself to a restaurant. I'm well out of the tourist area and find a place that's almost empty and rather cheap. I sit down, order a drink and something to eat. As I get my food I see my now wife walking past the restaurant. She sees me, I see her. I'm literally dumbstruck and just kind of grin and wave. Remember how I lost my phone? She didn't know that and just thought I ignored her. She waves and keeps walking. I throw like 200 shekels, way too much, in the table and sprint after her. Explained, and the rest is history. When I was a kid, I was chilling in the water of the Mediterranean Sea in Turkey. Suddenly I felt an awful burning sensation on my stomach and my legs. I looked like I had been brutally sandpapered and I got a 40C 104F fever. Turns out I made contact with a jellyfish and later found out that it hadn't happened on that beach for 10 years or so. I was just extremely unlucky. No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old PO2, famous for being very safe and uncrushable, on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash. 50 kilometers from the town/airport, on the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. Found me on their way picking up a shipment. And the only reason they looked was BC they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. Edit. First thing first. According to legends, 15 minutes. I never tested it though. So, according to my dad's, the theory that I might have lived was because the plane was mostly made out of fabrics and wood. So when the plane crashed, the front half collapsed and took the majority of the impact. Though I got knocked out, I was probably covered under the wreckage and in the shades. It cooled me off enough to survive for a day or so. I slept wrong one night and pinched a nerve in my neck so severely I lost the right side of my body. It just went silent like it wasn't there for months. I woke up in the worst pain I've ever experienced and couldn't talk, move or do anything. The ear doctor thought I was having a stroke. My doctor had never seen a case as severe as mine, and it was purely a freak accident. Recovery took months, but I have use of my leg and hand again, with some numbness. Other than pain and spasms, I'm mostly back to normal. The first one I don't know about the exact odds, but I was born on the 7th of July 1977 and weighed 7 pounds and 7 ounces. Sadly though I clocked in at 6:50 a.m. The other is that around the age of 14 I started to notice the outsides of both of my feet starting to get much wider. After a couple of years of buying expensive custom made shoes they decided to perform surgery on my feet. Turned out I had extra muscle growth along with something else I don't recall at the moment. My podiatrist told me he submitted a scholarly article on it. May also have been genetic, as when my dad was 3, he developed an extra toe growing out of each one of his big toes. When I was a teenager I had just started working at the local Sears Auto Center Express Lube shop, and on day 1 did a quick orientation in my first oil change. The manager walked away when he felt I was good to go, and the oil change went well. Fast forward a few days later my manager asked me to come into his office and he explained that the oil filter I had used had one huge flaw. I didn't know what that was, and it turned out the filter was pressed on backwards into the filter can, and it wouldn't allow oil to flow in, and it damaged the motor. They had to purchase a new motor for the person, and I still kept my job. He said it was a 1 in a million chance that would have happened, and it did on my first oil change. Not sure if this is a blessing or a curse, but I'm an extremely tall human. 7 feet 3, yes really, not sure how rare that is. 1 in 6 million of being over 7 feet tall. 1 in 2 of being asked how's the weather up there. I have the rarest type of synesthesia, lexical gustatory. It means I taste words. What's it like? With food words I'd imagine yeah I'd taste the food. But what do numbers taste like? Colors? Nouns? Do people's names have a taste? Sorry for the spam but this sounds so darn cool. Yep. Food words taste like the food. Other than that, words just have their own tastes regardless of what they mean. Also, The same words in different accents taste different. I'm allergic to the cold. Like literally. I get intense hives, swelling, I pass out, and throw up. Doesn't even have to be freezing. Below 45 degrees without a jacket, and I can't do it. I have to carry an EpiPen with me in the event that I drink something too cold or have a severe reaction. Edit. Thank you kind stranger for my first silver! Exclamation mark. Not quite 1 in a million, but close enough. As a child, I had an extremely rare autoimmune disease. On top of having an extremely rare illness, I developed the rarer and most dangerous of the symptoms. My kidneys started shutting down. Most kids recover from this disease, but not always the ones with kidney issues. I was extremely lucky. I did not have to go on dialysis, and my kidneys eventually reached normal functioning levels. It took a decade to be completely cleared of the disease. My mother likes to call me a miracle child not only because of this, but because she was not supposed to be able to have a kid due to health issues, and had several miscarriages before my stubborn ass decided to be born. Weird shit. I once guessed a 6-digit random combination on the first try. It was the only try I planned to give, as a kind of scratch pad whatever moment. My ex was struck by lightning several times and lived. Died in a car accident though, so not as lucky as he claimed to be. My dad once asked me for a quarter. I tossed it to him, and it went directly into his shirt pocket. I was at a Metallica concert a few years ago. I was near the front, and was super jealous when my friend I was with caught one of the guitar picks they throw out at the end of the show. While we were driving back I had an itch under the pocket on my shirt, and felt something in it. It was one of the guitar picks. My friend still had his. So James Hetfield threw a guitar pick from the stage directly into my shirt pocket. Super early on in a previous relationship my ex and I entered a contest and ended up winning a free wedding dress from David's Bridal. Me and my ex were in a bad place money wise and this seemed amazing. But it turned out we had to drive to another state to get it. We didn't have licenses or the money to even consider going there and back with a bus or cab or anything like that. So we, by which I mean I, because she refused to talk on the phone ever, called and told them the situation, but insisted we show up in person. They gave it to someone else. On the flip side it turned out to be a really abusive relationship, and I'm glad I eventually got out. I went to Antarctica a few times, about 4,000 go a year, and there are 8B people. So that's like 1 in 2. 000 000. This is my mum's story and I've posted it before, but she once called her friend back in the day on the landline and another lady answered. My mum asks if her friend was there and the lady says sure I'll get her. My mum's friend hops on the phone and asks how she now she was here. Turns out my mum got a number wrong when dialing. Called a random house where someone was hosting a Tupperware party and my mum's friend just happened to be attending it. Exclamation mark. What are the odds of that shit? Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit universe.